So right before the season began, I realized that I do not have a Pancham ready to evolve for the Great League, and by ready, I mean I need to catch 32 Dark types to evolve one of these. And I was really heartbroken because literally the season was going to start the next day. So I went out and I caught as many Dark types as I could. I already talked about this in one of my previous videos. And on my first day of looking for Dark types, I did pretty well. I managed to get there halfway, catching only from the wild. But then the spawns changed, we got the Galar starters, and I started struggling so much to find a dark type in the wild. There definitely were some dark type spawns, but they weren't spawning as much because the event spawns were kind of taking over. So it took me 5 days to evolve this Pangoro to finally get enough for it. And now I gotta work on an Ultra League one, which is going to be the shiny, which is really nice. But I'm working on that one right now. You can see I don't have a lot of dark types caught with that one, so hopefully it'll be ready before Ultra comes back. And I got a lot of comments telling me to use the adventure effect from Dawnwing's Necrozma because that will spawn dark types for you in the wild. However, I don't have a lot of fusion energy, so I'm really precious with it. And I also don't have a good Necrozma, so I haven't had a chance to fuse one. Once I fuse one, that's it. That's going to be the one I use for Master League, and I will never unfuse it. So I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I ended up doing it the hard way, and I went after every single dark type I found on the nearby, in the wild, on foot, walking, without the car, and eventually we got enough to evolve the Pangoro, and it was so worth it because this thing performed a lot better than I was expecting. I was expecting it to kind of suck because it is really squishy and it can't handle any moves, but it ended up doing so well on the team that I'm going to show you guys today. The team is Pangoro lead with 2 poison types in the back. Your 2 poison types are going to be Shadow Drapion and Clodsire. Shadow Drapion is going to be your safe swap to draw out ground types. Now this team does struggle against ground types like Gastrodon and Marowak. Those two are going to be really tricky to handle, especially since the Mud Slaps are going to hurt Pangoro. And the problem with Pangoro is that the Karate Chops and the Night Slashes are not going to do that much damage unless you get a boost, so you kind of have to go for the close combat and land a close combat on those ground types, which in most cases they will shield. And once you go for close combat, you'll debuff your defense, and it will be a lot easier for them to mud slap you down and have a lot of energy for whatever you have in the back. So that is one issue I was facing with this team, but it's not impossible to deal with those ground types, especially since your safe swap is Drapion, and Drapion is going to have 2 charged moves that are going to hit for neutral against the ground types. And if the ground type you're up against happens to not have a secondary typing of water, grass, or dragon, then you are also going to hit for super effective with that Aqua Tail. This is your standard ABB line with Dark Double Poison. The 2 poison types in the back are going to do a very good job of handling fairy types. They'll also cover the Jumpluff and the Talonflame weakness that your Pangoro will have. And I'm going to stop talking now because you guys get the point and we have a lot of battles to cover. Up first, we are going to get Pure Frustration, not because I get a really good lead, which I can win, but because my game ends up crashing here and there's nothing I can do. I end up getting a 4-1 in a set that could have been a 5-0. But at this point, you just gotta accept the frame drops and the glitches because it's not Pokemon Go without something going wrong. Anyways, on to the next battle. We are going to get a terrible lead of Azumarill. I swap into my Drapion and my opponent brings out a Talonflame, which is really good for me. I'm gonna be able to reach 2 Aqua Tails and now my opponent has to invest a shield. I think I decide to let this go. Yeah, I let the Flame Charge go. I'm not going to be able to reach another Aqua Tail, but I am going to come in with Pangoro and farm the Talonflame down. I have to shield once, otherwise if they go for a fly, then it is going to take me out. And now I have a lot of energy on this Pangoro. I'm going to close combat and then I am going to swap into my Clodsire. And hopefully they don't have anything in the back that is going to be a very hard answer to this. They're staying in with Azu and going for Ice Beam, which makes me think this might be their best answer left. Anyways, I go for an Earthquake here. They let it go, and now I'm gonna let Clodsire go, and I'm just hoping that my opponent doesn't have a Clodsire in the back. Otherwise, Pangoro is not going to be able to do anything. But they have a Stunfisk in the back, and now I'm wondering why they didn't bring this into Clodsire, because they could have gone for the Earthquakes, and those would have absolutely destroyed me. but they stayed in with Azu, and now I have my Pangoro aligned to their Stunfisk. I'm able to reach back-to-back close combats, land the second one, it takes the Stunfisk out, and then I can Karate Chop their Azu down and take that win. We got really lucky with the team composition there because my opponent definitely could have been running a Clodsire in the back. Moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against a Shadow Feraligatr, and now while the Shadow Claw fast move is resisted by Pangoro's Dark typing, a Hydro Cannon from this thing is absolutely going to hurt, so we have to invest shields. My opponent also shields, expecting me to go for a close combat because I built up to it, but I bait with a Night Slash, and then I think they attempted to catch the next move on their Clodsire, probably expecting me to go for a close combat on the second move. But for some reason, I throw a Night Slash and then I swap into my Clodsire, and now my opponent is going to be able to win switch because they are ahead by energy. Either way, if I swapped my Clodsire immediately, I still would have been behind by energy and I still would have lost that. So I want to save my shield because that Feraligatr is very scary for the two Pokemon that I have left. And here I think I am going to shield the Hydro Cannon. Yes, I have a lot of energy on my Pangoro, and I should be able to reach 2 Night Slashes before my opponent can reach another Hydro Cannon, and we win CMP. So I'm going to throw the Night Slash as soon as I get it, take the Feraligatr out, and my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Dugong. We're able to reach a close combat, and to my surprise, the Dugong doesn't survive. I really thought it might survive with a little bit of HP, but we're able to KO the Dugong and take that win. GG's to our opponent. I'm still getting used to the matchups, so I don't really know all the matchups for this team, but we'll learn as we go along. Anyways, moving on to the next battle, we're going to see a terrible lead of a Alolan Ninetales, and I didn't want to stay in to see if this thing had Charm or not, because a Charm is going to hit Pangoro like a truck. So I swap out immediately into my Drapion, and my opponent brings out a Greninja. Now, I decide to shield the Hydro Cannon because that crunch hurts, and it looks like they are going to be in Aqua Tail range now, and I really want to align my Clodsire to their Alolan Ninetales because Pangoro up against that Alolan Ninetales is going to be absolutely terrible for me. So I go ahead and I double shield my Drapion, I'm able to win switch, and my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Talonflame, which is actually going to take 2 Aqua Tails from us and even able to reach a third. This is going to KO, and I can swap into my Clodsire up against this Alolan Ninetales. They can go ahead and quit because they are not going to win this, but it looks like they are going to go for a Weather Ball here, and then they top left. GG's to our opponent. We are going to take another win there. Moving on to the next battle. Oh my goodness, look who it is. It's Gligar back from the past, but if this thing is running Wing Attack, that's not good for my Pangoro. So I swap immediately into my Drapion, and thank goodness it is running Wing Attack because Wing Attack got nerfed. So the Gligar is going to be reaching its charge moves a lot slower. That means Drapion is going to destroy this Gligar because it can reach Aqua Tail in just 4 Poison Stings. Now my opponent swaps out into a Dugong. I go for a Crunch, and we get the defense drop. I go for another Crunch now, and that is going to hurt, putting the Dugong in the yellow. I swap into Pangoro because my opponent is switch locked and I can bring Pangoro in now. They go for an Icy Wind, which is going to hurt because Pangoro is very squishy, but now I have a lot of energy and I can go for 2 close combats up against this Gligar, but unfortunately for my opponent, I think they might be lagging. They're either lagging or they've given up. They've done that thing where they try to top left, but then they stay in the game. It happens to me. But anyways, I'm going to bring in Clodsire here to take this Aerial Ace. I know they're not at a dig. We're able to Poison Sting them down, and then my opponent top lefts, and we're not going to be able to see what their final Pokemon was. However, we get a 4-1 in the set. Really annoying because this could have been a 5-0 if my app didn't crash in the first game. But it is what it is. At least it's still a positive set. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Hypno. Now, even though Pangoro is a fighting type, its dark typing makes it so that psychic type moves are 2 times resisted. Now, my opponent could either be running the Elemental Punches and Shadow Ball, or it could be running Focus Blast, which is going to be super effective against Pangoro, but I highly doubt they're running Focus Blast in this meta. So I'm staying in, I managed to reach 2 Night Slashes, and then my opponent catches the third on their Alolan Ninetales. Now, I don't want to stay in and find out if this has Charm. Like I said, Charm is going to hurt Pangoro, so I swap immediately into my Clodsire. Unfortunately for me, they're running Powder Snow, which is going to be super effective against our ground typing. But I'm okay with losing Switch here because I have another Dark type in the back that should handle the Hypno, so I don't mind losing the Switch. They actually end up catching the Stone Edge on their Hypno, and they survive with very little HP, but I know that the Hypno is loaded, and I would rather take whatever energy they have on my Drapion because Drapion is a lot healthier. Turns out to be a Shadow Ball, which is going to be resisted by both of the Pokemon that I have left. They bring their Alolan Ninetales back in, and they don't have any shields left. I can take them out with an Aqua Tail, and my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Drifblim up against two Dark types that have two shields left. So my opponent is not going to be able to win this. I land a Crunch from our Drapion, and then I can bring in Pangoro and go for a Night Slash. We take them out, and we're going to take that win. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Chestnut, which is an interesting matchup because this could go either way, but I'm going to go immediately for close combat, and then I'm going to swap into one of my poison types in the back, expecting my opponent to possibly have a Gastrodon because Gastrodon paired with Chestnut made sense in my head. So I brought in Clodsire instead of Drapion because I felt like Clodsire would be able to handle the damage a lot better. But my opponent ends up switching Dugong into her Clodsire, and I can go for a Stone Edge, which is going to be super effective. Now I can bring Pangoro in up against this Dugong, and I'm going to throw the Night Slash right before my opponent can reach a move because I don't want to take a move from them. We take the Dugong out, and then my opponent brings that Chestnut back in. I am, of course, going to shield whatever this is because both Frenzy Plant and Superpower will KO us from this range. And my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Drapion. They let the close combat go, which is really good for us. I can now bring in my own Drapion and go for a full farm down, have a ton of energy for this Chestnut. I'm gonna go for this first Crunch. They let it go and they survive. Now they are in Aqua Tail range, so I'm just gonna go for an Aqua Tail. We take their final shield here, and I decide to shield up because I will be able to Poison Sting them down and take that win. GG's to our opponent. In the next battle, I met with a terrible lead of Azumarill. You know what to do here. I swap immediately into my Shadow Drapion, and we draw out a Dunsparce. I'm going to go for this Crunch here, and we actually get the defense drop. And now I am going to invest a shield, and I should be able to reach two Aqua Tails before my opponent can reach another move. So I'm going to go for this first Aqua Tail here, and then I am going to CMP tie with my opponents on the next Aqua Tail, and we managed to take both of their final shields. Now I'm going to let my Drapion go, and hopefully with a shield left, I should be able to handle what my opponent has. However, my opponent swaps immediately into their Azu, and now they are switch locked up against our Clodsire. Now obviously, the Clodsire and Azu matchup isn't that great for Clodsire because Azu is going to be able to hit for super effective with the bubbles and the Ice Beam. I decide to shield this next Ice Beam because I have to get this Azu out of the way. I'm able to reach another Earthquake, take the Azu out, and hopefully whatever they have left in the back I can take care of, but I mess up here. It was a Scrafty. I mess up and I let them catch the close combat on their Dunsparce. And unfortunately, we're going to lose that. I could have easily won that if I waited a turn or two to see if they were going to make a catch, but GG's to my opponent, very well played. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Low-Kix, and this thing is part Dark type, so a Fighting type move is going to be neutral. The close combat lands and it one-shots, and my opponent brings in a Dunsparce, so I'm going to stay in this. I have a lot of energy on my Pangoro now, and I can go for another close combat. I am going to choose to shield up here because it looks like my opponent might be core broken by Pangoro, so I go ahead and I double shield. And now I'm going to build up to back-to-back close combats, throw the first one, and my opponent is not going to shield this. They let their Dunsparce go, and then their final Pokemon is a Clodsire. So I have no idea why my opponent didn't bring this into the Pangoro. Clodsire wouldn't take a lot of damage from Pangoro's moves. Close combat is resisted, and Night Slash doesn't do that much damage unless I get a boost. So not really sure what happened here, but now my Clodsire is going to be up against theirs. We are going to be able to reach another Earthquake here. This will take our opponent's final shield, and all I need to do is reach an Aqua Tail on our Drapion. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have enough energy, but actually I have two Night Slashes loaded on Pangoro, so I can go for both of those. I get a boost, really unnecessary at this point, and we are going to be able to take the Clodsire out with the Pangoro. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next match, we are going to be up against a Clodsire on the lead, which is terrible for us. I am immediately going to swap into my Drapion and start going for these Aqua Tails. Drapion is super spammy, and if you can land 3 Aqua Tails, you should be able to take the Clodsire out. I'm going to go ahead and shield whatever this is. Unfortunately, we get baited with a Stone Edge, and then my opponent swaps into Feraligatr, probably attempting to catch an Aqua Tail, but I go for Crunch. We manage to get a debuff, and I can go for another Crunch here and take a shield from my opponent. Now I'm just going to let Drapion go. I can't afford to invest my final shield because their Clodsire is scary, but I am going to be able to reach another Aqua Tail, and my opponent invests both shields. Now I choose to bring in Pangoro, and I'm not going to shield the Hydro Cannon. It does so much damage, but I am going to be able to Karate Chop their Feraligatr down. Now, I swap immediately into my Clodsire into theirs when they bring theirs in, and I decide to shield the Earthquake, and it was the right call because their final Pokemon is going to be Jumpluff, so our Pangoro isn't going to be useful to us at this point. Clodsire is going to be able to sweep this. I can take the energy balls. They're not going to do that much damage. They are neutral, but thank goodness we didn't get a defense drop. Going to be able to reach another Stone Edge, leave with a little bit of energy, and I am going to reach that Earthquake before they can. It is going to one-shot, and we are going to take that win. GG's to our opponent, and that is going to be another 4-1. That could have been a 5-0 if I didn't mess up in that one game. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to see a terrible lead of Jumpluff. I'm immediately going to swap into my Shadow Drapion, and my opponent is staying in. I managed to reach a Crunch, and they even decide to shield it. Now, because they're staying in, I'm calling that they might have an Acrobatics, and I was correct. We managed to shield it, otherwise that would have hurt, and my opponent brings in a Greninja now. We land a Crunch on the Greninja, it gets them into the yellow, and at this point I'm thinking to let my Drapion go, but my opponent goes for a Night Slash, not a Hydro Cannon, and we can reach an Aqua Tail, and now we can take our opponent's final shield. They're going to go for another Night Slash here. It's not quite enough to take us out, so they are going to get one more Water Shuriken in, and then I can come and Karate Chop this Greninja down, but this Hydro Cannon is really going to hurt. But at this point, I'm really hoping that my Clodsire will be able to sweep this for me. They bring that Jumpluff back in, I swap immediately into Clodsire, go for a Stone Edge, and I'm going to let whatever this is go because I need to save a shield for whatever my opponent has in the back. I still haven't seen their third Pokemon, so I gotta save it just in case. I'm still not good at calling backlines in this meta because the meta's still new, so we're still learning. It is going to be a Drifblim. Saving that shield might have been a good call because Icy Wind is going to be super effective, but we were able to land a Stone Edge. I can bring in Pangoro now because Pangoro is going to resist that fast move. We can take it out with a Night Slash, and I even reach a Night Slash on the Jumpluff, take the Jumpluff out, and we are going to take that win. GG's to our opponent. Now, if you guys remember the beginning of the video, I mentioned that there are 2 core breakers for this team, and one of the core breakers is Kanto Marowak. Well, we are going to be up against it in the lead, and it's going to be Shadow, but my opponent swaps into a Clodsire, which is very interesting. This is a very tricky team for me to deal with. It looks like they have ABA ground types, which makes me wonder, what do you do against a water type in the lead? But they swap that Clodsire in. I bring in Drapion because Drapion is spammier, and also my own Clodsire would lose that matchup if I brought it in because it is behind on energy. So I go ahead and I double shield the Drapion. I try to leave with as much energy as I can because I want to try to reach 2 Aqua Tails against their Marowak so that I could take both of their shields. Unfortunately, I only reach one and we can't reach the second, so I take only one of their shields. They have a shield left. I really need it out of the way, so I decided to bait here, but unfortunately my opponent also calls a bait. They let the Night Slash go and they survive. I reach another one and we finally take their last shield, but my opponent does something interesting here. They save the energy on their Marowak and then they swap into a Toxapex. I can now leave with energy on my Pangoro, enough energy for a Night Slash, and Pangoro should win CMP over Marowak. And then I can bring in Clodsire and have Clodsire up against their Toxapex. Now I can go for these Earthquakes, but I do something kind of weird here and I go for a Stone Edge. I'm not sure why I did that. Actually, if I recall correctly, I was worried my opponent would swap into Marowak and snipe my Clodsire, and I really needed to get that energy off on Toxapex. That way, if I reach a Night Slash against the Toxapex, which I do, it will be enough to take them out. That's exactly what ends up happening, and we end up taking that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next match, we're going to see an amazing lead of Dunsparce, and my opponent swaps into a Malamar, which is not a solid answer for Pangoro. I go for a close combat before swapping out, and my opponent actually lets it go. It gets him into the red, and now I can bring in Drapion, and we manage to Poison Sting their Malamar down and have a lot of energy for their Dunsparce. I'm able to reach 2 crunches against this Dunsparce. We get them into the red, and we even reach another Aqua Tail. They're not throwing any moves for some reason, but we take the Dunsparce out. Their Malamar is out of the way now, and their final Pokemon is going to be an Azu. I still have Clodsire that can hit for super effective with the Poison Stings against the Azu, but I should watch out for the Ice Beams. Most likely they're running Ice Beams. I haven't run into any Azus running Hydro Pump yet this season, but I'm just going straight Stone Edge here because my opponent had 2 shields left. We managed to land 1 Stone Edge. The second Stone Edge took a shield from them, and I'm deciding to save my final shield for Pangoro, so I'm going to go for another Stone Edge here. We take their final shield, and then I can swap into Pangoro, shield whatever this is, and a combination of close combat and the karate chops will be enough to take this Azu out before it can reach another move, so my opponent goes ahead and top lefts. Moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against a Malamar on the lead. Now I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go straight for that close combat, and then I am going to swap into my Drapion. My opponent calls it and shields it. This is what I love about running Pangoro on the lead, is you can go for that close combat, debuff yourself, and then swap out. My opponent's going to go for a superpower and take a shield from us before swapping into their Clodsire. I'm going to be able to land 2 Aqua Tails, but I am not going to use my final shield on Drapion. I'm going to let this Earthquake go because, like I said, if you don't know what they have in the back, you have to save your shield. Anyways, here I am going to bring in Pangoro, and I'm going to farm up as much energy as I can before going for a close combat. And I go for a close combat because I wasn't sure if a Night Slash would be enough to take the Clodsire out. Clodsire is super bulky, it might survive it, and it was at a move. I managed to reach another close combat up against the Malamar. We take their final shield, and their final Pokemon is going to be an Alolan Sandslash. I can go for an Earthquake and one-shot the Alolan Sandslash. However, this Malamar is loaded on energy, so I think they only need 2 foul plays. With the Psywave damage, it is going to be enough to take our Clodsire out. And unfortunately, they are also going to reach a superpower up against our Pangoro, and they are going to be able to take this win. GG's to my opponent. That was a really good game. And guys, that brings us to the final battle of the video. It is going to be another win, getting us another 4-1 with this Pangoro double poison team. If you guys try this team out, let me know how it works out for you, and also let me know in the comments what teams you guys are liking in this new season. And if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, maybe leave a like, it helps me out so much. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!